Okay, so this is going to be an odd, random attempt at making a video because I've always wanted to do booktube and I find it really, really difficult to... Okay. And my cat wants to go somewhere. I've always found it really, really difficult to talk to a camera. I've tried and I've tried, but it's just, I don't know, it's probably a mixture of, or like, it's how my autism interacts with my temperament. I'm so kind of passive and responsive that it's really, really hard for me to just start talking when there's like nothing to respond to. But I don't know, I haven't tried in a while to talk to a camera. And I just woke up this morning. Like, I literally just woke up. I haven't even eaten. And I know, like, this is just my stupid web camera, and it's kind of dark, and my microphone probably sucks. And I don't even know if I'm going to do anything with this video, but I just thought I would try to just sit down with the books I've read this year. It hasn't been a particularly productive reading year for me, but I just thought I would sit down with a pile of books and just try to talk about them a little, like with no script, just me trying to get the hang of this again, because actually it's already going so much better than before, so I don't know, something just clicked in my brain, I guess, because I don't think I've ever been able to talk to a camera for this long already, so yeah, we're in that sense. Okay, this light is really bad. I'm sorry. Yeah, anyway, I'm already doing so much better than before. Yeah, well, I didn't even introduce myself. I guess I just figured that any person who would click on this video if I ever posted is probably someone who already knows me from other social media. My voice is probably also really quiet. I'm sorry about that. I'm just really bad at talking loudly. Okay, yeah, so my name is Eve, but I don't mind if you call me Eve because it's written exactly like the name Eve in English, and when you're speaking English, it just kind of rolls off the tongue better. So you can call me Eve, but you can also call me Eve if you want to. I haven't even made a channel at the point of filming this, but I was thinking of calling it in my own time because I always seem to be kind of late to everything, and I've literally been on and off attempting to make a booktube channel or some kind of fiction focused YouTube channel for like 12 years, I think. So also whenever I'm in fandom spaces, I tend to start creating for the fandom comparatively late, like after the biggest buzz is already over. I just tend to process things slowly. I guess that's also a symptom of my autism. But yeah, I have a really hard time keeping up with how fast paced everything is these days. And yeah, I was thinking about that name for the channel because I really want to take the pressure off myself. I want to be able to live in my own time. I don't want to rush things. I it's not like I'm really like slow in that. I can write a book in a month, but I do have delayed processing issues in especially like emotional stuff, I think. But yeah, I just like to mull things over in peace and take my time. Yeah. So anyway, uh, what I've read this year. Um, I started with a reread of um, one of my favorites. Was that my brother? If it was, I'm gonna have to continue another time. It wasn't. But yeah, I'm not confident enough revealing my filming attempts to anyone yet. So, I was reading. Really, I hate this light. Why does it keep going so bright that you can't see anything? Yeah, anyway, this is a Finnish poetry book by Ilona Heinonen. It's called Myöhäiskesän jumalatar, which means the goddess of the late summer, or late summertime. Yeah, so I've actually only recently gotten more interested in poetry. I've never before really actively read much poetry in my life, even though in high school I wrote some, but I guess I was more inspired by song lyrics and actually some manga that had poems as a regular part of the narrative style. So I think those were my main inspirations. And I did like whatever poetry we studied in school, but yeah, this has I think last year I started reading more poetry for just my own enjoyment. And this book was one of the first and yeah, one of the biggest inspirations why I continued reading poetry. It's very visual in both like the layout and the language. What I love about this is there's a lot of fairy tale, mythical references and very visual nature, imagery, symbolism. Really, like I'm a very visual thinker, so I love it. I love it when I can picture a really vivid and sort of surrealistic visual images when I read. And yeah, it's a plus that I like see it literally, but it's not literal in meaning. Like I love that. It's I don't know, it's just captivating. And there's a lot of that in this book. Those are the general main things of why I like that book so much, and it also inspired me to write more poetry myself because it really just hit that sweet spot. I think like before my new poetry phase I had read maybe some not so good poetry, which I thought was considered good at the time, like widely considered good poetry, and I didn't think it was good, and I figured that the reason I didn't think it was good would be because I don't understand poetry, but turns out I might understand poetry after all, and it might just be that it wasn't very good poetry. I'm not gonna name the books, but I think if you followed a YouTube discussion on poetry in the recent years, I think you might know some of the books I might be talking about. Anyway, let's move on. The next book I read was I Kissed Alice. I hadn't read that much like YA queer romance books in a while. I think the genre had become too tropey for me. Yeah, everything I picked up just started to resemble each other too much and lack some soul. I think I had quite a phase, I think before COVID, when I read a lot of, well, not necessarily primarily romance, but like queer related YA books, and yeah, I hadn't read them in a while, but this was a really pleasant surprise. I think I liked it exactly for the reason that some people don't like it, because I think people are expecting this to be a very light reading, very straightforward romance. Basically, there's these two girls who don't know that they are making a web comic, fan comic together about Alice in Wonderland. And the premise really hooked me. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have picked this up at the time. Alright, I changed my location into my room because now I won't have to keep jumping up every time I think somebody comes home. So, where was I? I Kissed Alice. So, two fangirls unknowingly collaborating on a webcomic. And in real life, they of course hate each other. This is one of those books that I would call a relationship book rather than a romance, because I think the difference is that in a romance book it's supposed to make you feel those giddy romantic feelings in anticipation of the romance specifically, and I think that's why this book disappointed some people, because they were expecting it to be more romantic and lighter, and there definitely is romance in this book, and I thought it was well written, but it's more psychological. It's about all facets of the relationship between these girls and also other relationships in their lives. It's very character driven, and it has more psychological depth than a general romance book. So I'm not really the audience for romance books in general, so that's why this really stood out to me, and I think it was marketed badly because it's really quite heavy. Not to me really. Like, I wouldn't call this book heavy. I would still like, well, it's sort of in the middle. But I understand why somebody who is looking for a light romance read would think that this is a heavy book. Well, I would say that it's psychologically intense in some places. But yeah, it's quite introspective, character-driven, relationship-driven. I really enjoyed it. It's also neat that it has some comic pages. The only thing that I was, well, not really even disappointed with, because I did like the book exactly as it is, but I was expecting there to be more online interaction between the girls. I was expecting to see more of how they met online and a little bit more of the interaction between them, how they're creating the webcomic, and there is that stuff, but not nearly as much as I thought there would be. It's really more focused on the IRL stuff. But yeah, it was a really positive surprise. Then, this was a reread. One of my, if not my favorite book of all time, the Makioka sisters. It's so lifelike. Like, I don't know I've read anything as lifelike as this before or since. I must have originally read it in Finnish in high school. And even then it was like it reminded me of The Little Women. But maybe like slightly more for adult taste. Like it's a bit more dense, the writing style. But there is something similar about, I think, the lifelikeness about it. And I only read this in English for the first time last year, and now I reread it again. Yeah, I can't read it in Japanese. I'm not good enough at it for that. I don't know if it has anything to do with the switch in the language or me growing up, but rereading it, it really solidified its place in my favorite books. I can't really explain what it is specifically about the writing style or the details chosen, but somehow it just feels so lifelike, and yet something still makes it like a fantasy. The world is harsh sometimes, but there are so many people who are just genuinely kind to each other, and even when they're not always kind, they just care about their friends and family members like people are supposed to. But it's strangely rare to focus on that in fiction, I think. At least it seems like people are prone to finding cruel characters and conflict and betrayal, those kinds of things, more interesting than just like care and kindness. And there is also cruelty and manipulation and betrayal and everything in this book, but it's more focused on how much the family members care about each other. I guess that's why it's so lifelike, because there is also those moments when it seems like nobody cares at all. I just want more stories where it can be the point, it can be interesting, that people just care about each other in a normal everyday setting, in normal everyday ways, even though they are also horrible people at the same time. It's complex. I love it, but at the same time, it's so simple. It shouldn't even be complex, but it is complex to try to explain it. I guess people have compared it to Pride and Prejudice because there is this sort of decline that probably reminds people of actually many of Jane Austen's books where, you know, family is losing their status and money, and they still have to get their daughters married and stuff like that. In that way, it is similar, but I actually don't think the book is like in style similar at all to Jane Austen, because Jane Austen is very, very focused on like the social commentary. There tends to be more of a sensationalistic plot in Jane Austen's books, and like the focus is on those, like where those things culminate. I guess in a way I could even say that Jane Austen is a little bit more plot driven, but here, even though same kind of scandals happen, same kind of crisis, the focus is not really, it's not in the plot of it. It's not like those events are not used in the same way as they are in Jane Austen's books, because the focus is really in the details of the daily life, if that makes sense. So it's a little bit more like slice of life, I could say, I think. But yeah, I like it how sort of everything has the same kind of weight in terms of the narrative, if that makes sense. And I mean it in a positive way. I experience it as a positive thing, because the emotional impact of these events is entirely related to the characters in this book, and not written for the audience to have a reaction to it, if that makes sense. And I think this is a pretty key difference. And I love Jane Austen. It's not that I think one is necessarily the right way to do it, but yeah, I really like how down to earth this book is. And then I also reread a quite weird book, Paradise Rot. It's very surreal. It's about this exchange student who moves into a house that has no real walls. I think similar to like how a big office space might be separated into sections. It's this old factory building where this other girl is already living, and it's, you know, sort of separated into apartments or rooms, rather more like a commune with rooms. But you can hear everything that is happening in the whole space, and it is very focused on rot and fungi. Mycology? Mycology? How is it pronounced? I'm not sure. It is very focused on biology and using the terminology in a quite poetic, surreal, symbolical way. And I really like that. You could say there is an off-putting amount of piss in this book, but once you get used to it, of course, some people might not have to get used to it at all, because some people are actually into that. for me it took a little bit getting used to, but in the end it just kind of really easily blends into the other stuff, and sort of this grotesque physicality, biology of this strange, surreal world, which is, it's just a sort of interesting, poetic, grotesque way of exploring sexuality and queerness. And like, this book is obviously queer, but it's not clear like in what way, or if it's sort of like in every way, but there's like no singular, or even there's no clear focus theme, if that makes sense. It's just it's very holistic, I guess, in a way that it approaches the topic through this poetic exploration of biology. It's very beautiful and strange. And then I finally read And Then. Yeah, that was not as funny as I thought it would be. I had not read Soseki Natsume before. I had meant to for a long time. But yeah, I'm really glad that I picked this book up first. Well, it was great. It was also, it made me feel a lot, because it was kind of challenging for me to read, because I just, like, everything about the main character, Daisuke's thinking style, is so repulsive to me. Like, the book does an excellent job at showing just like the psychology of a person like that. And I'm again doing a really bad job explaining anything about this book. Daisuke is basically in a sort of limbo where he doesn't absolutely have to work or get married, because he is, wait, how old was he again? I think late 20s. I'm not sure. I don't remember. This was almost a year ago by now. Well, not almost. 9 months ago, I guess. But yeah, he is still living on his family's money, and the family does have expectations for him to get married and to do something in his life, to be a part of society in some way. And he's finding it impossible. He is finding the expectations on him impossible to deal with. But he is really, really deep in denial about like the future and consequences. And it's like he keeps living in this endless moment that just stretches out, and he does nothing. He just keeps going around in circles in his head and philosophizing himself into inaction. And also he's like infuriatingly judgmental of the society around him. Like he truly believes that he's not a part of it, like he's too exceptional. And that, I think that's why it's so infuriating to me, because I have trouble dealing with this kind of mindset in real life. Like, I suppose it's because there are a lot of ways in my life in which I have always been othered and made to feel like I'm not welcome in society, basically. But I never had this moment when I started like turning that around and making myself special and being like, oh well, then I don't want to be a part of society. Like if you're rejecting me, then I'm making that like my whole personality, and since you're rejecting me, it must mean because I'm so special that you just don't understand me, and of course I can't be a part of this society that is full of stupid people. Like I never had that kind of moment, that kind of mindset, which I think it pisses me off when I see people falling into that kind of mindset, because I see it a lot in neurodivergent people, queer people, you name it, where they just, I suppose it comes down to a self-esteem issue, where you use what has been done to you and turn it around a little too far. And I see an echo of that in Daisuke very, very strongly. But I guess it's more infuriating because it really looks like he's not even trying. Like his particular circumstances make it really, really hard for me to empathize with him, because like my gut reaction to the fact that his circumstances are still so privileged in comparison to other characters in this book, it just makes it feel like he's not even trying. But as the book went on and I got more and more into his perspective, of course I started to empathize with him. It was really a struggle. Like it made me feel so many things from one side to another. Like at one point I was really feeling sorry for him, and then at another point I was really mad at him, and it was just an emotional roller coaster, because the reality of someone with this kind of mindset and psychology and philosophy is just so well done in this book. It feels so real. The best part of this book is that Daisuke is so infuriating, and it's also the worst part of this book. But but that just means the book is really, really well written. Yeah. Then I continued to read more Soseki Natsume. I just don't have them anymore because they were library books. I read Kokoro and Spring Miscellany and something else. Kokoro was fine, but it wasn't to me as phenomenal as and then. But yeah, I do have a book journal, which I only started making this year actually. I quite like this one. It's a bit neater than the others. And we have, and then we have Kokoro. So yes, I really enjoyed how this book was able to depict how guilt can eat a person alive. And this author is just super good at writing tragedies that are at the same time completely inevitable and completely avoidable. Like, I think that's what makes a tragedy really hit you. And yes, this author is very, very good at that. And then I apparently stopped. I have a few books that I need to journal about. Ursula Le Guin's writing guide, Steering the Craft. This was a really, really, really good read. It's very short. It's very clear, precise. This is not the writing guide you want to start with, like if you've never written a novel before. If you consider yourself a beginner writer, then I think read something else first, something that really gets into the basics of how to structure a story. And you know, this is better for writers who already have a solid grasp on the basics of their craft, and they've done it a few times from beginning to end, whatever it is, like novels, short stories, whatever kind of fiction you write. This is really good for fine-tuning your writing style and narrative choices, and sort of this is really good for making your writing more intentional. That's what this is excellent for. And also I really loved how there were like nuanced takes on why some popular writing advice is bad. And yeah, I just really kept vibing with this book. And also it was kind of comforting to see that the master herself has similar weaknesses that I do. Yeah, it was really solid. And then I read this version of the pillow book of Sei Shonagon. I've read some version before, I think in my early university years, because I read this book by a Finnish author who traveled to Japan specifically to research the writer of this famous diary of a courtesan in 10th century Japan. And I really loved that book. So my first introduction to Sei Shonagon was through that other writer's eyes. But yeah, I wanted to get back to it because there is just something so captivating to me about this time period where the court life is like so contained that most people have read the same works, the same poetry, the same fiction, and in this very contained society. I can't think of a better word for it. It's, in a sense, it would be a dream come true to me. Like everyone is referencing in their speech and own writing the same source materials. And because you can trust that everybody knows them, it's like, or like most people do. Of course, not everyone has read everything. There are degrees between how educated people are, but like you can make so specific references and trust that the other person will get it, and if they don't get it, it's not because they haven't read the source, it's because they're not smart enough, or like you were too subtle, or and like that's so fascinating to me, because I would really like to know how I would do in a world like that, like because I just live from specific subtle references, and I write a lot of fan fiction, and I keep referencing other works of literature in a very, very, very free way that I could not do in my original fiction, because you have to think about the reader, and I write fan fiction in a way that I think about the reader a way, way less. I just do whatever I want. And that means that I make a lot of intertextual references that probably escape the reader. But like my wish is that somebody who has read everything that I reference and understands all my references would read my fanfiction. Like, that is the ultimate dream. And I think this society is like the closest I have ever seen a reality where that's true. Like, that idea is just so, it's like such a fantasy to me. And it's amazing to see that in some context people can get really close to that. Yeah, that's the charm of this book and this time period for me. Then I think I listened to some audiobooks while I was too busy to read. Oh yes, at first I listened to In Praise of Shadows by Junichiro Tanizaki, the same author as the Makioka sisters. This was more like an essay. Mostly, I didn't expect it to be so much about architecture and interior design. It was mostly like comparing those things about East and West. And it was sort of coming from the conflict between like where you personally fall into in like taking influences from another culture. Where does it feel like it's pushed on you, and where it conflicts with your traditional values, and where you're like more merging them in a way that works together, and all sorts of things like that. It has been written in a time where that was especially relevant. But I find that it's still quite relevant today, and I also found it kind of relevant to my own experiences, even though it's obviously not about my specific circumstances or my specific culture. But yeah, it was quite meditative and interesting to listen to, even if it sometimes felt a bit more like a rant than an essay, and then in some other points more like a meditation. And yeah, it was interesting. Good use of some bus rides. And then I listened to this in Finnish, so I'm not sure what the English title was. Why I'm no longer talking to white people about race. Yeah, that's the English title. So yeah, it had been on my list for a while. And I probably just basically cried through the whole book. So yeah, it was a very, very emotional book. Like, it's just, I knew that it would be very hard, because books like this are always hard for someone who can't control their empathy. Like, it's just, yeah, it was heavy. And I also happened to listen to it in between my own very heavy therapy sessions, so I was probably not in the best headspace to listen to something so real. Like, you just absorb so many emotions from a book like that. A very honest reflection of someone's lived experiences and how it relates to the larger context of society. In this case, obviously racism the most, and feminism. While I have deep dived into like most major social issues enough that I probably didn't like specifically learn anything new from this book, like factually, or like there probably wasn't anything I hadn't heard before in that book. It was still like, it's always fresh when it's someone's personal perspective. So that's why I think it hit me so hard. Yeah, but very much recommended to anybody, basically. And then, well, I started listening to Life Among the Savages by Shirley Jackson, who is, you can't see anything in this light, the author of The Haunting of Hill House. So far, I'm not sure what I think about it yet. I'm about a quarter through, but we'll see. And then, also, I just finished reading The Harpy by Megan Hunter. I was rewatching the TV show You for, I think, fourth time by now. And I actually really want to make a video series about it, because the more I watch it, the more I understand its brilliance. And it took me a few watches to really appreciate everything that it's doing there. I don't like everything that it's doing there. Specifically, there is one season that I have a problem with. But yeah, I would really like to make a video series about that TV show. But yeah, I think it was because of you that I was in a headspace to read something more in the thriller category, but actually this wasn't as much of a thriller as I was expecting it to be, based on the cover style. But yeah, it is about a woman in her 30s who learns that her husband has cheated on her with a colleague. And then the book is about how her rage and dealing with that betrayal translates into hurting her husband 3 times, which they agree to, that she can hurt her husband 3 times and he won't know how or when. But like the point is that then they are even. So yeah, it is set up like a thriller, but kind of also a domestic contemporary, not a thriller, but a contemporary literary-ish book that sort of skews into the thriller territory. But yeah, it's not a thriller, not even as much as the cover suggests. To me, it wasn't, at least. It's really, first of all, to me, this is the kind of novel that oddly reads like a short story, even though it is obviously novel length, even though it's not very thick. But yeah, it's just it's neither plot or character driven. It's more atmosphere driven. It's really because it feels like it's less about the characters' psychology and more about the characters' feelings sort of translating into how the moment feels and how the moment unfolds, and like the weight of each moment. And yeah, it's very atmosphere driven, I think. Even though there's a lot of reflection on the past, it feels very in the moment at all times to me. And to me this was like delightfully mid. Like I don't even mean that in a bad way. It was just a book that I know I will never read again, but I enjoyed reading it. I just didn't really have a connection to the characters to the level that I would need to get really obsessed with a book, or to think about it for an extended period of time, or analyze it, have have an inclination to analyze it deeper. This was just like an easy, light read to me. It was quite poetic, but also I felt like there wasn't that much more to it than is apparent in the text. It was a solid read, but also like that's it. Yeah. That's where we are. That's everything I've read this year so far. Okay, this was some kind of a test anyway. I will try to do something a little bit more planned and refined next time, I hope.